Hello, guys. Just wanted to tune in and share something that's been on my heart lately. I've been in a season of a little bit of pullback. You'll notice I haven't been on Facebook Live for it's been almost a month since the last time I came on. Sometimes we need these times of just kind of like pulling back and recalibrating. And I think, it's kind of been in the space that I've been in. Sometimes those of us who are real go-getters, we can get a plan and a vision, and we want to just run full speed ahead in the things that we feel God is calling us to do. But sometimes we have to really take these times to pause and really settle our hearts before the Lord and just allow him to speak in. And sometimes it's a thing of pullback, and that's really what I've been feeling like the Lord has wanted me to share today. Is this has been a real season of shift, and in some ways it's required pulling back. And God gave me this vision, and it just keeps coming to me over and over whenever I find myself in contexts where I'm getting to prophesy over people. He keeps giving me this vision, and and I really feel like it's just so indicative of the season that we're in right now. Sorry, I'm trying to find a spot where the sun is, let me see if I can do this. Yeah, okay, that's a little better. I can stand by this tree and the sun is behind me. Yeah, if you're watching, just drop me a comment so I can see who's watching and where you're from. So it's been a season of pullback, and this picture was one of a lot of people, we've been going in a certain direction, and it's the Lord set us out on this path. So it's, it's not something that we did of our own, but it's where the Lord had led us in a specific season. And so we were running just really full speed ahead in this certain direction. And I really just saw, God in the pause and the pullback and the redirection. And so what I saw was it's this path that we had been on, it's we were going in a certain direction, and, there were certain forks in the road, but we ignored them. We just kept going. We just kept moving, because it's we just knew, I feel like there's two elements of it. There's some of us, it's we know that we heard God, and so we just kept going on in this direction. And, you know what, I'll just leave the other. But what I saw was that as we were heading in this certain direction, it was becoming narrower and narrower. And, the Bible talks about the narrow way, so it's not always a bad thing. But we were noticing that in this plaint, it's in this situation, it wasn't like a good narrowing. And so it's we continue going, and it was getting tighter and tighter. And there was just a level of constraint that we were coming up against. And I see that the level of constraint, it caused a lot of confusion, and it caused a lot of questioning. And I just see that at the end of this road, it was a dead end, so to speak, and so I saw a lot of people in this place of almost kind of reeling, because okay, but God, you told me to go in this specific direction. This is the path that you had for me. But I feel what God is, I feel the well done, there is that well done for you guys. It's about the pivot point. How many of you feel you're at this pivot point, and so we're pivoting, we're all pivoting, and it's been going on for months. But I just want to release this, God is in the pivot. He's in the pivot, and he's okay with the pivot, and sometimes we take that oh, but God never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And, so we take what he says to us in one season, and we just run full speed ahead. And what we think sometimes is our strength of conviction is sometimes actually our stubbornness. And so, I feel God has shown me, even in my own life, some areas where it's where I've just continued in a certain way, and because sometimes, we might start out in conviction, but then we get to a point where it's we want to make things happen. And so because of our own strength, sometimes our strength will turn into stubbornness, because we don't want to veer off, and we don't, if we don't pause and silence ourselves long enough to hear God's direction. And sometimes that's a little bit of a redirection. And so we've been in this real season. So if you are running full steam ahead, full speed ahead, and I just actually saw like the faster that people are running in this season, actually the quieter that the voice of God is going to seem to you. And so I heard it's like the clarity, there's a certain level, a certain wavelength, a certain frequency, a sound that is being released from heaven. But I saw that like there was a stillness, an internal stillness and a posture that was required to catch the specific frequency that heaven is releasing. And so, in the rushing and in the busyness and in the sprint and the full speed ahead, some of you guys have been noticing that you can't hear the voice of God as clearly because the frequency has changed. And so, if you know anything about physics and wavelengths, sometimes there's that Doppler effect where, you hear different sounds because some frequencies have like a longer wavelength and some are like, a shorter wavelength. So if it's, if you're moving really fast, you can catch that. But so anyway, I kind of maybe just geeked out there a little bit. So there was this needfulness to slow down and change our pace and our speed so that we can catch the correct frequency that God is speaking. And, so I really was feeling that, and I've really felt the pullback. And so when I saw a lot of us running ahead in this specific direction, just going full speed ahead, and in our tenacity, in our running, we were noticing that the path was getting tighter and tighter as we've been in a season of constraint. And I just heard the Lord saying that he is releasing us. He is releasing many of us who have gone and have followed him into what has been a place of constraint. He's bringing us, it's a pullback and a redirection to release us out of the places of constraint that we've been in. Now, I couldn't see your comments before there, and I just figured out how to see them. So I just want to say hello. Hey, Kimberly Rockwood, good to see you. Josie Lavoy, Viorka, Corinna from Germany. So good to see you guys. Yeah, I'm on in the middle of the day. So some of you guys who, like Corinna over in Germany, you can actually catch me. And so that's only part of the word. So it's a redirection. So I saw this need where it's like we needed to settle down, slow down, quiet down, because God is actually reversing us out of places of tightness and constraint. And there's no condemnation for the fact that we got there, because it was by the Lord's leading. But there is a pivot and there is a fork in the road. So I just saw this need where we need to back up. We need to be in a place of internal rest and stillness so that we can hear that still small voice of the Holy Spirit, because it's a different frequency. God is not loud and shouting, and it is that needfulness to be quiet and still in his presence so that we can hear where he is sending us and where this redirection is. And guys, this redirection is so important, because as we submit and as we, release ourselves, as we allow God to release us from this place of constraint. So I saw the one path as we back up and we take the fork in the road and go in the other direction, that it is actually opening up, and it's wide and it's spacious, and there's so much there's just so much possibility and so much destiny. But a lot of us get stuck on this because, and I'll relate here, because of our stubbornness. Sometimes when our strength becomes stubbornness and we're like the bulldog, we sink our teeth in and we don't want to let go, and so there's the kingdom perseverance, and I'll be a little bit vulnerable here. There's the kingdom perseverance, and sometimes there is our own pride in wanting to stick it out, and so we have to allow God to shine the light on the motives of our heart and to check our spirits to see, are we doing things and are we hanging on to what God told us in a past season because he's still confirming the word, or has he given us a redirection? And I just saw these new plans, these new blueprints, these new scrolls being released that are sending us in different directions that we hadn't previously we hadn't previously thought of. And I actually had a dream. And in my dream, this certain prophet who was a mentor to me, she handed me this scroll, this like blueprint, this new path forward. And the path that was given to me was actually that of a roller coaster. And so I looked at this map, and it was this of a roller coaster. And so this is the shift, like it's the shift. And so it's not necessarily what we want or what we would plan, like what we would have picked or planned, but God has a different way, and just in that, like, don't let your strength become stubbornness. I'm really feeling the weight on that. God, he gave me this other picture this morning, and I just want to say hello to some of you guys. Nadine from South Africa, Charity, hello, Kayla Lopez. Good to see you guys. Ella Ware from Alabama. Amber Sheets. Hello, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. So this morning, after I was laying on my bedroom floor, and just in quietness and just spending time with the Lord and just seeing what He would speak to me. And He gave me this interesting picture, and I'm going to describe it a little bit because I don't know if any of you guys can relate. So when I grew up, my parents lived on like a crescent, like a cul-de-sac. So like all the houses were around like this big circle, and the kids, we'd like all ride our bikes and play in the street. And it was like pretty safe because it was like a dead end. And so in the winter time, like when the snow plows would come, because I'm here in Canada, so we get lots and lots of snow. So they would plow the street, and then they would push all the snow into the middle of the road. And so we'd have this like mountain. So for us as kids, like it was like this mountain of snow piled in the street, and we would just play. We would play out there for hours, like from the time we came home from school to like dinner time. Like we just play. We would build, it was like a snow fort, like a castle. We would build tunnels and dig, and it was just so much fun. We'd slide down it. But we used to play this one game, and I have 5 brothers and 4 sisters. So we would play this game, and when you're playing with your siblings, you can get a little competitive. And so we used to play King of the Castle. How many of you guys have played King of the Castle? And so the goal in this game is to be the last person standing at the top. So basically what we would do is we would all run up different sides of this snow mountain in the middle of the road, and you would push everybody off, like you would throw them down, and you just push them. And so whoever got to the top, you would wrestle, and you just like try and push them off. And so of course my brothers like would always win, but they'd be like throwing us down, and and so I saw that scene, and I saw that was a picture of like this last season where there's been that determination, like, okay, like no one's going to throw us off the castle. We're going to fight till the end, and so God was just giving me that as a picture. But then I saw the scene changed, and no longer was it a scene of us like wrestling with friends and siblings going up the mountain. But I looked, and the Father was standing at the top of the snow hill. And as I saw, the Father at the top of the hill, it was this sense of like, oh, what do I do now? Do you dare wrestle with the Father? Do you dare try and push the Father off so that you can be at the top? Any kid knows you're not going to win against your dad. And so I just was looking, I was like seeing this dad standing at the top, and it was like, and I felt like God was saying, this is indicative. This is like a picture of the shift that's happened, where it's like, we've been in this wrestle in the past season, and the assignment was different. And it was about like, holding the ground and holding the territory. And then I saw the Father come in, and it was like to hold on and to fight and to wrestle and to continue on in the way, that we have, is actually in some ways putting ourselves in opposition against Him. And so I feel like that holiness on that. I just feel like this pause, like, This is why the pause of the season is so needful. The pause and the hold, because what was okay in the last season, where he called you in the last season, the way that you even did things in the last season, whether it's like in your business, your personal life, whatever area, it's not necessarily the way that he's asking you to do it in this season. And so I saw that, like, to continue on in the old way of navigating, the old way of conquering, the old way of taking ground, the old way of holding on to what we believed was ours, the old way, of trying to be the king of the castle. And so there's this one element, there is the one element where we have these moments, sometimes the Father's like, come on, wrestle with me. Come on in. And so I do feel that, like, I do feel an invitation. I do feel that sense of invitation on one level, just like we know that, like, Jacob wrestled, he wrestled with the angel of the Lord. He wrestled with him all night. And he said, I won't let go until I have my blessing. I won't go until you bless me. And so there is that element of wrestle, and I feel like that is a big thing of this season, because in the wrestle with God, Jacob, the supplanter, the schemer, he was given a new name, and he became the father of many nations. Israel, he changed his name from Jacob to Israel. And so there was that wrestle. And so there's this sense of step into the wrestle that God is inviting you in. And hang on, but don't expect that you're going to overtake him. But in the wrestle, Jacob was transformed and given a new name. And so this is what the pivot has been about. The pivot and the pain of the season where you have been shaken to the absolute core of your being it's been about a coming of age. It's been about a grow up moment where God is bringing you into a place of blessing you, not of I'm going to make your life easy and comfortable, but the blessing will come out of being burned in the furnace of affliction. The blessing comes in the purification. The blessing comes in being in the olive press and being squeezed to the point where all the crap that needs to come out, all the stuff that's not kingdom, where it's able to be squeezed and pressed out so that we're soft and moldable, that we can be these vessels of honor that are able to hold the glory of God, and so that's the blessing. So yeah, there is a wrestle that God is inviting us into that is going to result in a blessing, but I just feel this holiness on it, because that when you wrestle and you take this invitation, man, I feel it. When you say yes to the invitation to wrestle with God, you are going to go away with a limp. You're going to go away with a limp, but you're going to be given a new name. Because you receive the promise as a certain person. Just like Abram had one name when he was given the covenant that he would be a father of many nations, Abram, the exalted father, but his name was changed before he actually stepped into the promise. And so we're in this place too. We're in this place, guys. He's changing our names. He's changing our names. He's doing such an incredible, beautiful work, and I just feel like, guys, so many of us are feeling the pain of transition and the pain of shift and the relational dynamics and things, and I just feel this because there's some good things. There are some really good things that you have to walk away from. There are good things. There are things that God is in for other people, but he's not in it for you. Because he has asked you to pivot. And so what is good for a multitude, and what is good for certain people, what is good may be good for your best friend, if God has not called you to it, it is not good for you. And so this is the wrestle. because we need to be in a place of intimacy with him where we are getting our direction from the Father. So that we know this is the maturing. You know, there are times, there are certain stages of development, you know, like as a kid, you know, like growing up for me, it was like, you just do what mom and dad say. Like, you don't question, you just do it. We didn't really get an explanation, but it was just that thing of like, you are a child. You just have to understand that I am the adult and I know what is best. And so you just listen and you just follow through. But there's this coming to age where we are not those little children anymore. Some of us, you know, and you need to be able to discern, and you need to be able to have God reveal to you what is the stage of development that you're at. What is the place? Like, are you still needing, like, are you a new Christian? Did you just get filled with the Spirit like last year? Like, are you still like, you need some milk and all that? There's no shame in that. We need to understand, like, we all go through like sequential stages of development. So we need to know, you need to be able to locate yourself. You know, so if you are like a little, you know, 4-year-old in the Spirit, you can't pretend like you're a teenager because the rules are different. You know, but then you grow and you develop, and there's a certain stage that you come to, and it's like, you know, as you're stepping into adulthood, as you're becoming an adult, you know, the input that you get from parents, it's different. It's different because it is, you know, you have matured and you've grown, and you hear God for yourself, and you're living your own life. And so you step in with your parents, and they're, you know, if your parents do it, I shouldn't say if your parents do it well, but like there's a point where your parents become more like peers, more like friends, like if you have a healthy, you know, good relationship. And so in that place, they're not ordering you around and telling you need to do things, but it's more of the invitation. But then this problem happens if, you know, if parents can't rightly, like if your natural parents can't look at you and see that you're not, you know, the little girl who needs mommy's help to tie her shoes. And, you know, she still, you know, if your mom still looks at you and thinks like, oh, she still needs my help with these basic, you know, things, you know, and they can't see, you know, and so I just use that example. I don't want to belabor that, but the point is some of the pivots that God is asking us to make and the shifts is because he needs to, some of us need to be moved out of places where, you know, because of the limitations of our history, and sometimes it's our family, especially, you know, those who really, you know you according to the flesh or know you according to the past, sometimes they have a hard time seeing you differently than you were as a little girl or as a little boy or someone. And so for God to bring you into the fullness of maturity, he needs to set you in a different place where you're going to, you know, where the people around you are able to like receive you more as like, you know, as you mature, and as a parent receives you like as more as a peer and as a friend, and where you can engage on that kind of level, you know. And so there is this shifting that's happening, you know. But guys, some of us are so loyal, like we're so loyal. And, you know, and it's hard to move away, but it's that like, we can't stay in the old places. Some of us, it's time to move out of your mommy and daddy's house. It's time to step out. It's time to, you know, be on your own. It's time to shift the dynamics, you know. And so this is what God, it was part of what he's doing. So there was another element I wanted to touch on. So there was okay, yes, wrestle with God. You know, if God is inviting you, you know, if you feel like you're in a wrestle, if you feel like you're just like frustrated, yes, Kayla, the new wineskins. It is all, yeah, it's all about the new wineskin. You know, so if you're in this wrestle and, you know, you got to know, like, it's like, Daddy will arm wrestle with you. But he can also like totally crush you, like if, you know, if in a moment. And so it's that wrestle, you know, that wrestle. And so what I see, so it's the changing of the name, it's the coming of age, it's the becoming a different person. And really these last few years have been about maturing and becoming a different person, becoming a softer, more humble, more pliable, humble but confident version of yourself, knowing without a doubt who you are, knowing your identity. So it's been that, but also, you know, God giving you the new name so that you become the person to step into the prophetic promises that have been spoken over you. Because we know the prophetic, is about calling the things that are not as though they are. And so often the prophetic words that get released are so out there, and they seem so lofty and so impossible. And it's because you have not yet become the person that you need to be, you know, for some of these longer term words to step in. You know, so wrestle, knowing that God will change you, and you will come out with a limp. And that limp is going to be something that's going to keep you humble. That limp is something that is, you know, think of the limp. Think of Paul had the thorn in the flesh. You know, it said that Paul asked and prayed for the thorn in the flesh to be removed, whatever it was. But it said but it wasn't removed, lest he become exalted beyond measure because of the multitude of revelations. So it was like something that kept him in a place of humility. And so sometimes we got to walk. We got to learn how to walk with a limp. And it's the limp that keeps us leaning on him. It's the limp that keeps us so close. And it's that limp that reminds us who we are and who we're not, like who we are and who God is, you know. But there's this place where we can take the wrestle too far, you know. And so go back to my picture of the king and the king of the castle game, you know, playing out in the snow, throwing, you know, there was the time for playing around, throwing your brothers and sisters down. Not that we should do that in the kingdom. But in the kingdom, we need to hold hands and ascend together. But, you know, as my childhood example goes here, you know, but there's a point where if you mess around too much, you know, so have your go with the Father. Let him do what he needs to do, but know that he is the king. That he's the king. And that there is no way that you're going to be able to dethrone him. There's no way that you're going to be able to rise up and take out your dad, just as in the natural. But it's like I saw this. I saw this, like people who were just so doggedly, so intensely insisting to wrestle and push forward and not take these steps backwards. And it's this, like God saying, like, either get with me or get out of my way. Get with me or get out of my way. And if you haven't heard his voice and you haven't got your new direction for the season, there's a very good chance that you're pushing against him instead of actually going with the flow of the Spirit. And so we need to pull back. If you haven't pulled back, if you haven't been in a place of quietness, a place of like really pressing in to hear, just humbly consider that maybe we're, you know, off track. And it's a different posture. It's a different posture that there's a different posture that we're called to take in this season. It's a different posture, guys. In the last season, it was developing your perseverance and your strength and your tenacity and your go get it. It was a pushing. It was like an advancing. There were certain muscles that were being developed, and it was good. And it was a posture of like, I see like a bulldog of like digging your teeth in and holding on and saying, I will not let go. I will not let go. And that's what we needed to do. That's what God was after, was to not let go. So many of us were tested. You know, a big test, you know, that I had to go through. It's like the difference between, and this is like how God breaks off, you know, he's got to break off the fear of man. As you get to a certain stage of your development, you know, there's the stage where you're led by your mom and dad as a small child, but then there's the stage as an adult in the spirit where you have to be led by the Lord. And so you will face the tests where God, and it's like the young prophet and the old prophet, where the young prophet goes in and he brings the word of the Lord to the king. I can't remember his name, but it's in, I think it's 2 Kings 13, where he brings the word of the Lord, and the Lord says to him, like, you know, do not pass back, do not eat in this place, just go on in a different way than you came and keep on going. But the old prophet came in and says, but the Lord came and told me something different. And so it's this test of when God speaks and he tells you something that you have to do, but then there's this thing of a false honor where we want to honor and we want to, it's like if a child, you know, you want to just listen to your parents because you just want to please them. Like if you're just used to, you just want to please mommy and daddy and just do whatever they say because that, you know, sometimes that gets instilled in us, you know, but God is testing that because that has to do with the fear of man. So this place of like, can we hear God over the voice of man? Can you hear God over the voice of man? And guys, I'm not speaking against authority. We all need to be under authority. Every one of us. You can't have authority if you're not under authority. But the posture is different. We can't just sink our teeth into what we had in the old season and say, I'm going to keep pushing and nobody's going to stop me, because the posture of this season is very different. And it's still one of advancing and taking territory, but it is not of gritting our teeth in and holding tightly, but it's actually with hands and heart open and loosening our grip. And I just saw this like need to loosen our grip on the things that we're holding in our hands. Some of you guys, you got a death grip. You got a death grip around a prophetic promise that God, or a prophetic word that God gave you in a past season. And I hear that the time of expiry has come up. That it's past expiration date. And so you need to let go. You need to cut the tie to that past promise that you're holding on, because it's not time for holding on with a death grip, but it is a time for letting go, of surrender, for holding everything loosely, for taking those things that you wanted, your Isaacs, and laying them down on the altar. Will you take your Isaac? Will you take that thing even that God gave you? Will you lay it down on his altar? Whether that's a job, a business, a ministry, a church, a relationship, an opportunity, something that you know God gave you, something that was good, your Isaac. But we can't let the thing that God gave us in a past become more important to us than the voice of the one who gave it to us. And so we have to hold everything loosely, assuming nothing about the future. Are there things in our lives that if God put his finger on them and took them away, we would be undone? You know, and this has been part of my last couple months where, you know, God has put his finger on something. And I was so angry when he did it. But I just kept hearing the still small voice. This is what, you know, spared me from going off the deep end. He was like, I'm in it, Jenny. I'm in it. And no matter how angry I was or upset at injustice or things that didn't seem fair, I could hear the voice, and it was a bit of an irritation to me because I wanted to be mad at people. But he just kept saying, I'm in it. I'm in it. I'm in it. And so it's like, can we get past our emotion and our frustration to hear the voice of God so that we can pivot? Because you have to hear his voice. You have to be able to hear his voice, because he is redirecting our steps. And sometimes the redirection is just so he can see if you're listening. And I just saw this, like, you know, so laying our Isaacs down on the altar, letting go. Because if there's something we're holding on so tightly that if it's taken away from us, we're going to be completely undone and not know what to do with ourselves, then we have our priorities and our heart out of alignment. And so I see where, if we don't loosen our grips on some of these things, they will actually become idols in our hearts. And so can you hear the voice of the Lord saying, it's time to pivot. It's time to pivot. And as you pivot and as you let go and as you lay some of these things down, there's a couple things that are going to happen. For some of you, there will be no going back. It will be done. It will be dead. And then for some of you, it will be for a time and a season. And I see into the future, I can see some pretty beautiful full circle moments where there are things that we thought we knew we were supposed to, and God is like pulling them away, but they will come back around in a different time, in a different season, in a different position, when you're in a different level of authority, in a different place to see the fulfillment, when you have allowed him, when you've wrestled with him, and when he has changed your name after you've gone through that coming of age kind of moment. So yeah, thanks guys so much for tuning in. This was just feeling so, so heavy, so like, okay, this is time, because it's been almost a month since I've done a Facebook Live. And just this morning, I just heard the Lord, okay, let's do this. It's time to go. It's time to get up, but it's required a time of pullback, recalibration, and just allowing God to refine and purify some things. So, all right, I'm going to release some personal prophetic words. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in and listening. I just want to say hello, my beautiful niece, Kirsten Aitchison. Hello, Ellen, Jessica, Andrew Harneman, Rachel Ray, Jana Jacobs. We got a couple from South Africa on here. Todd, good to see you. Susan Whitberry, Tatum, Michelle Jusen from Germany. All right, guys, just drop me a comment or emoji if you're still on here. Thanks for the encouragement, Kayla. Kayla is one of my Emerging Prophets Ontario students. She's amazing and awesome. Kayla, I just want to prophesy over you. Not like we have class tonight and I don't have an opportunity to prophesy over you every single week, but wow, Kayla. Man. Whew, I just saw I see such intentionality for you in this season. And it was I feel like all these, it's like you've just been picking up all the pieces. God has been leading you and guiding you. And it's like you've had all these disjointed pieces and you've been following, the breadcrumb trail, so to speak. And it's been all these things okay, I'm supposed to go here, go there. This doesn't really make sense. What am I doing? How does this fit with this? And I thought, and it was all this swirling of things, and it was it doesn't add up and make sense. But I just actually really see this being a season of the pieces coming together and things really being able to make sense. And I just feel like God has just done such a sharpening in your spiritual gifting and your ability to hear things in this season. And so it's even when it's when everybody else is saying, no, look, the sky's blue, look, it's blue. And you're like, no, it's not, it's green. It's where you've just had such a different perspective and you've just had such a different, word of the Lord, or where everyone's yeah, no, we got to go right. We got to go right. And you're no, the Lord told me to go left. I see that you found yourself in these places just time and time again, where you're I am not going with the same flow that everybody else is going with. But I just hear the Lord saying, but you were listening to me and you were catching the flow of my spirit. And there is a sharpness that you have because you just have different DNA. And so I just see the Lord really using you and the sharpness that you have to bring sharpness to so many other people. And it's that iron sharpens iron, and you are the iron that, sharpens others. And even, in our friendship, iron sharpens iron. And so I really value that about you. And I really see God using it because you you know, you're just not a blend in with the crowd, go with the flow kind of girl. You're like a, what is God saying? And I'm going to go with that flow of the Spirit. And I just see a willingness that you have. I see God increasing a willingness in you to swim against the stream and against the current. And it's like, I actually, you know, in your pool, and we do the like whirlpool. Have you guys ever done that where you go around the outside of the pool? I just actually saw you doing that, Kayla, like, you know, where people are trying to create a certain current and a certain pull. And I just saw you actually swimming against the current. And so it's like, there was this current that was trying to be created to pull everybody into a certain synchronicity and and I just saw you coming in and actually really messing up the current, like really stirring it up and bringing, you know, what seemed a little bit of chaos. But what it's doing is actually really causing people to think for themselves and to, you know, not allow themselves to be pulled with that which just seems so convenient in the natural progression of things. So she says, I'm still swimming against the current in this season. No pressure. But have fun. Like, have fun. Like, you're called to be a go against the stream. And it's really, God is really shifting the DNA of the Canadian church and the Canadian people. And so there's really, you know, there's certain DNA that you carry, or certain things that you don't carry because you weren't born here in Canada. You know, certain things you don't have that God doesn't want the church to have. And so you're going to be able to like really show that there's certain things that we think are the way that they should be, but they're not kingdom. And so, yeah. Oh, Kayla, you are a strong swimmer in the Spirit. You're a strong swimmer in the Spirit. Yeah, and God is developing those muscles in you. Carolyn Naff. I'm going to prophesy over you. Yeah, Carolyn, I see God really speaking to you in some pretty powerful ways in this season. And I can see you having like dreams and visions in the night. And I see you even having like these deja vu moments where you're actually stepping into things and you have this sense of like, oh my goodness, have I not been here before? And it's like the Lord has actually sent you before, and you've actually carried certain things out even in your sleep. And it's like, I see, Carolyn, some of the things that you're dreaming in the night, they're not even just dreams, but they're actually part of like a form of intercession and like a spiritual warfare and like even deliverance, like where you're doing things in the night in the Spirit that is actually unlocking and breaking things open. And so I just see like the night season being so precious to you. So just continue to cherish you know, everything that God is saying, and just like really steward the revelation, like, you know, write these things down. And I see Jana, you're saying, wow, I feel the same. Like if anyone watching you feel like this resonates, like take the word for you, because God is releasing things in the night season, and it's not just for one person. And I've had actually multiple like personal encounters myself where God has broke something off of me while I was sleeping. One thing that happened was, and this was years ago, I had cancer in 2015. So yeah, almost 10 years ago. But after that, even though like I was cancer free, I just still had this like nagging little bit of a like, oh no, what if it comes back? What if I die? What if it spreads? And it was just this nagging like fear of death that would just, it wasn't there all the time, but it would come around. But I actually had an encounter in the night, and there was this fire that literally burned me up while I was sleeping, and I woke up. And I woke up, and even when I was awake, I could still feel the heat of the fire that was burning me, and the fear of death left. Like the fear of death left. And I never struggled again with that nagging thought of like, oh no, is it going to come back? Am I going to, you know? And so there's powerful encounters like this that are happening because God is so kind. Like he is so kind. Just like Muslims all over the world are getting saved because they're having dreams in the night where Jesus is coming to visit them in their sleep, and they're having real encounters and meeting Jesus and coming out, and he's bringing them into the kingdom. So I just share the testimony because testimony, you know, it releases faith, you know, for things that, you know, so you guys can step into it too. So don't limit yourself. What God will do for me, what he'll do for Carolyn, you know, he'll do for you. So just believe it. Just believe it. Hello, Gloria Narija from Puerto Rico. Stacy Diffendaffer. Hello, Elaine Shepstone. Andrea Winder, hello, good to see you. Bobby Parasic, hello. Rachel Ray, good to see you guys. All right, I'm gonna pick someone else. Who else is highlighted to me? Okay, Tatum. Tatum. I think you're in South Africa, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. We got quite a few South Africans on here, which is great. Tatum, yeah. Man, Tatum, I see you standing when, I see you standing and just like right to the last, I just see you someone who is just like standing right to the end, like standing when no one is left standing around you. And it's like, I see that you've been in this, there's almost been like a sense of almost like feeling like alone and wondering like, oh, did I miss it? Because like, why am I still hanging on when everybody else has let go? And I just see you like, I see this tenacity in you, and just this, you know, where you have such a strength and such an ability, you know, to be in some ways like that last one standing. And I just feel like the Lord wants to like really just encourage you to keep hanging on and to hold on. And I just see there's something of like you having this ability to outlast other people, like really to go the distance and to outlast to a place where like everybody else would have like let go and given up. And so, you know, earlier I was releasing a word about like, don't be like the bulldog if God's telling you to like release. But I feel like for you, I just see it's like Holy Spirit is holding you. He's holding you in a place, and you're just so sensitive to the flow and to the wind and to what he's saying, that you're just like, I am going to stay here until you release me. And so it's like, even though, you know, it seems like everybody else has been released and everybody else has been like set on, you know, in different directions and paths. It's like, you're just holding. Okay, you're saying this is accurate. I have no idea who you are. But it's like, I just see you there, and it's like, it's almost like you're like, but I'm the last one. And sometimes it feels like, oh, am I the last one picked? Am I the last one released? But Tatum, I just feel it as like this good thing, like the Lord is in it. He's just in it for you. And so just hold your ground. Just hold your ground, because it's like, I see that as, you know, when the Lord releases you, your journey is, it's almost like I can see the ones who were released prematurely or who like jumped ship, like before it was quite time, or they could see like, oh, the ship is going down, so I'm like gonna get out of the boat, you know, right away, because, you know, they could see, but it wasn't time. It's like, I see you almost like the, you know, kind of like the captain who's like, oh, and it's almost like you're there and you're like, am I gonna go down with the ship? Like, are you gonna release me? And I just see that like the Lord, like, I got this funny picture. I don't always share. I often tell my students, don't share your pictures when you're prophesying. But literally, it's like I saw everybody was escaping into the lifeboats and there were no lifeboats left. And you're like, oh no. But the helicopter's coming. And so where everybody escaped into the lifeboats in the effort to paddle to shore and to be against the winds and the waves and to like bust through, you know, in the season because of the timing of their exit or the way that they stepped out of things, the helicopter's coming for you, because you're someone who's going to take the high road. You're someone who takes the high road, who leaves in honor, who you have been a person of honor even when people have dishonored you. And you've, you know, it's just that. And he says, because you're someone who has hung on and you've taken the high road, I am going to send, you know, your rescue or your next stage. It is going to be one of promotion, not of like a horizontal just a horizontal move. So it's like I see like all the ones who got in the lifeboats, they actually are going to have to go repeat some of the lessons and the things, you know, because they got out too soon, or they escaped. So they're actually going to have to go, some of them are going to have to paddle really hard, and some of them might have to go around the mountain again. But the Lord says, well done, you've passed the test, Tatum. And so you are going to be moved, like promoted as you know, when the time comes. So just hang on. All right, guys, give me some feedback if, because some of these prophetic words I'm releasing are, you know, some of them are, God is so creative. I can't take any credit because I'm just like releasing as he's giving it to me. But I just love, he's so creative and he gives me pictures that I've never seen before. And so give me feedback. Like if, you know, if it resonates with you, you can always send me like a message on Facebook, Facebook Messenger. I love to hear feedback, you know. And I just wanted to let you guys know, we've got some new people on here, but I run a prophetic mentorship group. I've been running it for the last 3 years. And because my passion is really, one of my passions is really to like help people find their voice and help them to like grow in intimacy with God, learn how to prophesy. You know, the prophetic is about intimacy with God, knowing his heart, knowing his voice, accessing the spirit realm through Jesus, like all those good and beautiful things. And so really love to like get people unlocked and activated and help them go deeper in their relationships with God by, you know, developing them prophetically. And so I've been running a prophetic mentorship group for the last 3 years. I also am running the Emerging Prophet Ontario School. But the mentorship group is open to anybody in the world. We run it on Zoom from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Monday evenings. And so there is a cost there. You know, this is an investment in yourself, an investment in the kingdom. And, you know, so we meet, people join for 6 months at a time. We meet on Zoom. So I already said an hour and a half each week. And I would love to have some of you guys join. Some of you guys, I would love to meet with you, you know, in a small group setting where I can just help get you activated. This past week, we talked about like seeing visions and the difference between, like, we talked about, you know, different ways that, you know, we can see in the spirit, like through dreams and visions and trances and all these different ways, you know, whether we're awake or sleeping. And so each week we do, you know, a lesson on a different topic. We do certain activations and then we prophesy over each other. So much fun. And I love to see the fruit in the lives of, you know, all of my students. So, you know, because nobody leaves the same as when they came in. So actually this month, I'll put a link in the comments of this video once I stop going live, because it's $597 to be in the mentorship group. That's Canadian. For 6 months. I want people to make a 6-month commitment, but it's actually $200 off. So $397 Canadian. So if you're in the US, that's like $50, you know, small exaggeration, but I'll put the link in the comments. I would love to have some of you guys join us, get activated, and just, you know, be part of a prophetic community and company and learn about this, get some training, some prophetic words. And yeah. All right. Well, I think I'll be back more often. I know it's after this time of silence, but we will see. I'll be back as the Lord leads. Have a great afternoon. Love you guys.